welcome everyone to this special edition of Calling the Audible, the Hall of Fame edition, as we get ready to announce our fourth inductee. I'm your host, Peeze as I have been all week. And as I have been all week, I've been joined by Robert Campana, league president. Rob, how's it going?
It's good.
As you've been saying this entire evening week. We are, of course, produced by the Eagle at Master Control. And if you'd like to reach us to let us know your thoughts on the Hall of Fame and this whole production, you can, of course, reach out to me at PeezeFPF on most social media platforms and Peeze Del Ruiz on Facebook. We are brought to you by Sportira and the Sportira Cage, official suppliers of FPF uniforms and home of Calling the Audible, our whole range of FPF podcasts. Rob, this brings us to inductee number 4. The fourth player to be named is... I really gotta work on the timing. Antonio Lani. Antonio Lani, congratulations. Before I even get into anything else, I want to start with a quick story. Because I was going to make a joke, and I think enough time has passed so that I can. I'd like to say that Antonio Lani is a recognizable face in FPF, but the first time I saw a picture of Antonio Lani, I would not be able to recognize his face. It was shortly after he suffered a horrible injury where he just, with no regard for his body, he just threw his body around to make a stop and dove for a ball. Got a knee to the face and had a broken cheekbone and a concussion and just, deep bruising. GM Clethris showed me a picture and he's like, yo, you got to see what happened to Antonio Lani, whose name
that was scary.
I began to recognize, but I had not yet had the pleasure to meet him. And so it was absolutely a scary moment. I was like, wow, I mean, this can happen in FPF. It can't. It just happens when you play at that speed and that level of competition, and that's truly what stands out for our fourth inductee, man who collected 30 votes this season. Was he first ballot? Is this the first time he was eligible?
No, it was his second year, I believe. If I'm
you
not
have
mistaken.
so much a better memory than I do. It's ridiculous. I forget all these things. The teams he's played on, of course, and teams he's known for playing on, of course, are D-Boys, Roosters and Donkeys, Knights, where he's even quarterbacked before. D-Boy, he debuted in winter 2009 with the D-Boys. He's collected 4 championships. But Rob, he has no personal awards, which I am completely surprised by, just because of how dominant a player he's been for so long. Is he the first Hall of Famer without an award?
I'm pretty sure he is, Paulo. I'd have to have the research team confirm that.
Hey, research team. Get on it.
Okay. But just to show you, and the thing is Antonio is your prototypical. First things first, Antonio Lani had 0 football experience when he started playing in FPF. He was one of those bandana-toting guys, showed up, probably wore goalie gloves the first time he showed up. He is a soccer goalie.
Well, I was going to say, he's a goaltender, right?
Yeah, which usually tends to transition quite well, we've seen. They tend to have great hands and, are able to basically throw themselves around, as we've seen with Antonio Lani and most soccer goalies. But Antonio is a guy who's really an FPF success story. He essentially, like you said, Paulo, he started off in 2009 playing with his brothers. Of course, he still does play with Giovanni and Leo. And these guys basically started this team off as kind of like a little fun thing amongst themselves, brothers and close friends. And what they've done is essentially taken this D-Boys roster, which started off as a lower division team, and brought it up, year by year, level by level, to the point where they are now sitting at the very top of the mountain in Division 1, arguably sharing that top of the mountain with Montreal's finest over the last few seasons, or last few years. And Antonio Lani has just as big, if not the biggest role as anybody on this team. He's essentially his brother. I would always say his brother Johnny and he are the hearts and soul of this team. Mm-hmm. But Antonio, from a talent perspective, Paulo, and that's the thing where you asked me about the zero awards. First off, he's been playing at higher divisions for a few seasons now. But
confirmed, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. So, Antonio is a defensive player. That's what he is. He's improved as a receiver. He is not in the Hall of Fame for his quarterbacking skills. I think we can all agree on that. Fair. And Antonio will be the first one to admit that. But he is a stud defensive player. He's become arguably one of the top 10 defensive players in FPF, and that's saying something considering all the CIS talent that we have playing here, cornerbacks for Concordia, McGill, so on and so forth. So Antonio has really developed into that. But oftentimes what is the case is that these defensive players are almost avoided, much like the Deion Sanders effect, and like we've seen here in FPF with Nathan Taylor and Teddy Fournette, where some of these guys have so much respect from opposing quarterbacks that they tend to just be ignored. And from a statistical standpoint, obviously it reflects, poorly on your game-by-game performances. But Antonio Lani, standout defensive player. Anyone who's been on the field with him and competed with him, whether it be a teammate or an opponent, I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't have respect for Antonio Lani, A, in the way he plays, B, in the way he conducts himself. He's a guy who he walks that line, that very fine line. I think he does it well in the sense that he's extremely competitive and extremely intense, but he's also a great guy, a class act, and I think that overall he's really, really well liked in FPF, and it shows in the respect level that he it shows here in the votes, and and how well he's fared.
And that's the thing, where Antonio Lani doesn't necessarily have the stats. When you watch him play, you see a player who's ultimately instinctive, a guy who's all around the field, fills a multitude of different roles, plays in Division 1 where a lot of times you're called on to play man coverage, especially when you're playing those tight games against Montreal's finest, and for a guy a bit of a smaller build compared to a lot of guys in FPF, a guy who's not a football player, to have developed the way he has, just shows his raw level of athleticism, his commitment to the game, and his just instinctiveness and ability to react on the field.
Yeah. And that being said, Paulo, just as we've been giving him credit for, treating his body basically like it's a piece of garbage and throwing it around everywhere with no regard for his safety or his health in any way, it is nice to see that Antonio is back this year, because there were some rumors that he wasn't going to be playing because of post-concussion syndrome. But for those of you who've seen Antonio this year, he's actually rocking the Peter Cech soft shell helmet, and it's no one rocks it like you, Antonio. And we're happy to have you back playing, and hopefully you stay out of those famous collisions that that have made your career thus far. But obviously, stay healthy. It's good to see you back out there. But yeah, as far as Antonio Lani goes, I think it's really one of those guys that the tail of the tape doesn't tell the whole story. The stats don't tell the story on this guy, and it's clear by the fact that he was voted into this year's Hall of Fame class. So congratulations.
And he makes a mean cocktail.
That's what I've heard. Rob. So given that, have you thought of how to address the FPF concussion protocol, or how you'll deal with future CTE lawsuits?
That's it. We may have to stick you in a dark room with Paulo De La Rocca and have him run the tests. Yeah. No, obviously we joke about it. We're glad that Antonio's doing better,
of course.
But at least he's taking the steps necessary to kind of safeguard against hopefully anything like that happening again.
As someone who's suffered multiple concussions, it's glad to see him out there, glad to see him playing. Antonio Lani, you are our fourth inductee. Congratulations, very well deserving. Once again, Antonio Lani, fourth inductee in the 2017 FPF Hall of Fame class.